Hi ladies and gentlemen, it is I'm back this week and I'm perfectly sober. I wasn't drunk from that little bit of rum that I had last week. Today we're going to cover a very interesting topic. The topic where, you really want to get into the sound of an expensive earphone, but kind of don't have the dough for it. It's okay. I will find you some affordable clones that sound kind of like expensive earphones. Let's go! So the first flagship I'd like to talk to you about would be the Final A8000. Now these earphones are the pinnacle of detail retrieval, excellent soundstage, and for it to sound ultra fast. But which earphone sounds close to this? That would be its cheaper little brother. The Final A4000. So these two are brothers. As you can see, they look really similar in terms of the shape of them, but they are built very differently. The A8000 is built to an amazing stainless steel chassis that looks ultra bling. It's polished to a mirror finish, and I really like how it looks. It has a very nice sturdy heft to it. The A4000 on the other hand, it is the cheaper little brother, right? It is not made to the same standards. It is made of a plastic chassis and considerably lighter as well. The A8000 over here has a MMC examination and is paired with Final's Junkosha cable that is a feature on most of their premium earphone cables, and the Final A4000 just has some cheapy run-of-the-mill cable. But I think when the difference is this big, I think about 10 times difference, all these things shouldn't matter. In terms of driver though, they are vastly different. The A8000 features a single beryllium driver that is, beryllium these days are the premium material for dynamic drivers. It gives a very quick and fast property because beryllium is so rigid. By its rigid nature, it naturally wants to go quick and fast. Now the A4000 doesn't have the same beryllium driver. It has something Final calls the F-Core driver unit that is specially made for the A4000 and A3000. It is not the same, but sometimes, if you tune them similar, they can sound quite similar. Let's find out more about sound. Lucky for you, these two earphones share a very similar DNA. You can say that the A8000 is the premium sounding version of the A4000 because it literally has very similar characteristics. Both of these earphones are bright, detailed, has excellent soundstage, and they sound really fast. But the biggest differentiator between the A8000 and A4000 is how the A8000 is definitely of a better quality. But if you are on a budget and you want a slice of that great A8000 pie, I think the A4000 can do a rather good job as well. The bass of the A4000 is very tight and fast. I think it has really good quality for the price point. Well, of course it's not as great as the A8000, but I do not expect them to be so anyways. In terms of mid-range, they are both actually also really similar. The A4000 has a rather light, I wouldn't say tinny, it's more on the light and fast side of vocal rendering, which is in line with the A8000 as well. But one thing to note though, I find the A4000, it does sound very similar to the A8000, but in terms of details, the A8000 still has the edge naturally. And finally, in terms of highs, I think this is where the biggest difference between the two earphones are. The A8000, well, it resolves to a great degree, especially in the treble section. The A4000 does it in a similar manner, but does not have the last bit of air that the A8000 actually have. In terms of smoothness, the A8000 wins, but for the money, well, the A4000 is about 10 times lesser than the A8000. I think you can achieve about 50% of the A8000, which is already quite good in my opinion. Naturally, I don't expect them to sound exactly alike. If not, then what business is Final going to make, right? But if you're looking for this bright, detailed DNA that is in line with the A8000, you can seriously consider A4000. Honestly, I would rate it a very good value. A4000 sounds very different from others in its own competing categories. They usually come a bit more natural or natural warm or just plain warm sounding. The A4000, it's a breath of fresh air as it is actually very, a little bit bright sounding. And yeah, there you go. All in all, I think the A4000 is an excellent, cheap alternative to the A8000. Well, the next two IEM in question would be the Moondrop Quarks and the Moondrop Variations. They are from the same family, but they feature vastly different technologies inside it. First, we have the Moondrop Quarks. Now, these are, well, Moondrop's entry level to their already cheapy range of earphones. It is powered by a single dynamic driver that is paired with a fixed cable that isn't very premium. And with the variations I have over here, the variations are a completely different beast. I would say that it is one of Moondrop's flagship IEMs. It's a 5-driver IEM with one liquid crystal polymer dynamic driver, 2 soft ears, tuned balance armature, and 2 EST drivers. Now, how are they similar? Honestly, I would classify both these earphones as a rather balanced sounding pair of earphones. They both kind of fall in the same category. Now, do they sound exactly alike? Honestly, they do not sound exactly alike. I think that the Quarks here has a slightly elevated mid-range and a little bit more focus on the mid-bass, while the Variations takes a more refined approach where it focuses a bit more on the sub-bass, and in terms of vocals, takes a more nuanced approach. Based on the Quarks, as I mentioned, it has sub-bass, but it isn't that prominent. The mid-bass, on the other hand, the Quarks are a bit more explosive, you get more rumble, you get more mid-bass kick with the Quarks. So all your kick drums that you hear in rock tracks, they are a bit more prominent over here. The Moondrop Variations has a little bit more focus on the sub-bass. It has a slightly different rumble profile compared to the Quarks. It rumbles a little bit lower, mid-bass is a little lesser. But yeah, in terms of quality, definitely the Variations is better, but the Quarks, for the price point, I really can't complain. And moving on into mid-range. In terms of mid-range, as I mentioned before, the Quarks are slightly more elevated compared to the Variations. The Variations, on the other hand, you can actually tell it's just a hair more recessed compared to the Quarks, but that's where all the similarities lie. In terms of quality, definitely the Variations, it runs circle around the Quarks, but that is to be expected. These things cost quite a bit more than the Quarks actually. So the Variation actually has a very smooth and lyrical vocal section, so vocals sound extremely smooth on the Moondrop Variations. The Quarks, on the other hand, is a little bit more prominent, but the thing is, it sounds a bit more grainy as well. It isn't as high resolution, but it has a bit more texture. So in a way, it's not as refined sounding as the Moondrop Variations, but honestly, if you're really on a budget, I really would not complain about that with the Quarks because they sound very, very decent. Comparing them with the Quarks, it's like, heaven and earth comparison, but if I was really broke, this can really make me a little bit more happy. And finally, treble. Treble, honestly, is the biggest difference between these two earphones. First, the Variation has the dual ESTs that's handling the treble section. Treble on the Variation is ultra smooth. On the Quarks, on the other hand, I think it's not as smooth as the Variations, but I really kind of expected. These are way cheaper than the Variations anyways. But with that said, if you're really broke and you want an awesome earphone to start out with, I think the Moondrop Quarks are really good for that. Some people claim that they are a little bit shouty, and to a certain extent I do agree with you because the mid-range does sound a bit rough. So my biggest suggestion to that would be to not listen to your music so loud. They're actually really fine if you don't do that. And personally, I never listen to a loudness that made me feel that they are absolutely really shouty. I find them really acceptable for the cheap price that they come with. Of course, comparing to the Variations, they share the similar balanced approach to tuning with a bit more emphasis on the mid-range and mid-bass with the Quarks, and that is very typical of cheaper sounding earphones. But do they sound absolutely terrible? No, they do not. Of course, the Variations are better, but for me, if you are a collector, they kind of sit in the same section where they are balanced and pleasant sounding, and they are awfully excellent at the price point. And finally, let me conclude everything. There are many earphones that share similar DNA. As I mentioned to you, the A8000 and A4000, those from Final have the same DNA through and through. They are absolutely really alike compared to the Quarks and Variations comparison. They do sound a little bit brighter, but Obviously, Final has to product differentiate, so the A4000 is of a cheaper make. It doesn't sound as refined as the A8000, but they do sound rather similar. The Quarks and the Variations, on the other hand, they are from the same family, but they do not sound exactly alike. But in terms of quality, I think the Quarks are excellent for its meager price point. All the Variation is an expression of what Moondrop wants to achieve if they are allowed to have a bit more budget to do so. And with that, thank you guys for watching the SuperChonk Super Audio Show this week. I hope you find this week's discussion a bit more interesting. I'll try to do a bit more of these comparisons in the future, and so to get an idea on how earphones sound more like their expensive counterparts. Generally though, if you want to know the gist of things, generally the cheaper earphones are not as refined sounding. You can really get some quite decent stuff at a cheaper price point, but to fight the flagships, they are price expensive for a reason. Thank you guys so much for watching the SuperChonk Show. If you like the content so far, please press the like and subscribe button right here down below, and press the bell icon as well. I really appreciate you guys coming back, and I hope to see you guys soon.